He could dance, he could act, he could sing, man. Gregory Hines was a triple threat. From Broadway lights to Hollywood screens, his rhythm spoke louder than words. Every tap he made told a story, a heartbeat, a legacy in motion. But somehow, even with all that brilliance, his name doesn't get mentioned enough today. How does that happen, y'all? A man who carried tap from the streets of Harlem to the biggest stages in the world, and still, people forget. Gregory wasn't just moving his feet, he was moving the culture. He brought class, soul, and swagger to every performance. He was one of one, and once you saw him dance, you never forgot it. Let's get into the story of a legend who turned rhythm into poetry, Gregory Hines. Let me know where you're watching this from in the comments. Grab yourself a warm drink, maybe a cup of water or tea, sit back, and let's start this journey together. Gregory Oliver Hines was born on the 14th of February 1946 in New York City, right in the heart of Harlem, when jazz, rhythm, and soul were the heartbeat of the neighborhood. His father, Maurice Hines Sr., was a drummer and performer. His mother, Alma, kept the family grounded while raising two boys who would later bring rhythm to the world. Gregory and his older brother, Maurice Jr. Music wasn't just part of their home, man, it was their home. The Hines family lived and breathed entertainment, and it didn't take long for little Gregory to find his calling. By the age of 2, he was already tapping his tiny feet in rhythm to his father's drum. By 5, he was performing on stage with Maurice Jr. The brothers were natural showmen, confident, charming, and fearless in front of a crowd. Their father soon joined them, forming a group called Hines, and Dad. They performed in nightclubs and on television, bringing smooth tap moves and infectious smiles that made people fall in love with them instantly. But it wasn't easy, y'all. The entertainment industry in the 1950 period was still full of racial barriers. Black performers had to fight twice as hard for half the recognition. The Hines family faced discrimination on the road, hotels that wouldn't let them stay, clubs that underpaid them, and audiences who didn't always respect their craft. Yet, they kept performing with pride. Gregory once said performing with his family taught him discipline, heart, and soul, the kind you can't learn in any dance studio. As a kid, Gregory admired the greats. He studied the moves of the Nicholas brothers, those pioneers of tap who mixed athleticism with elegance. He also looked up to Sammy Davis Jr., another multi-talented entertainer who broke color barriers with grace and charisma. These men became living proof to Gregory that talent could outshine prejudice. And while most kids his age were busy playing outside, Gregory was performing in smoky jazz clubs, soaking up rhythm and timing like oxygen. That Harlem environment, the sound of church choirs, street drummers, and jazz musicians shaped his identity. You could say the rhythm of the city became the rhythm of his soul. From those early days, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a kid with fast feet. This was a born performer, a young man who would one day redefine tap dance itself. By the time Gregory Hines hit his teenage years, he was already a seasoned pro. While most kids were just figuring out who they wanted to be, Gregory was sharing stages with legends. Performing with his brother Maurice, he was fearless, sharp suit, fast feet, big smile. You could tell, even then, he wasn't just dancing for applause. He was communicating through rhythm. Every shuffle, every slide, every spin meant something. During the late 1950 period, the Hines brothers made regular appearances on television and toured across the United States. But as Gregory got older, he started to see that tap, once a mainstream art, was fading from popular culture. Rock and soul were taking over, and audiences weren't showing the same love for tap anymore. For a moment, it looked like an entire tradition was about to disappear. But Gregory? He wasn't about to let that happen. He took a break from performing in the early 1970 period, studying music, acting, and the structure of rhythm itself. He learned how to make tap speak in a new way, looser, more conversational, more emotional. Traditional tap was precise and formal, but Gregory brought something raw, something human. He once described it as talking with your feet. He was heavily influenced by the old masters, the Nicholas brothers, Jimmy Slide, Chuck Green, but he also wanted to push boundaries. He started mixing jazz improvisation into his routines, blending old-school tap with the freedom of modern dance. When he performed, it wasn't choreography anymore, it was storytelling. He could make a single tap sound like laughter or heartbreak. Man, that was art. Sammy Davis Jr. took notice early on. The two met backstage one night, and Sammy reportedly told him, "You've got something special, kid. Don't ever lose that." That encouragement stayed with Gregory forever. And just like that, he began shaping what many would call the modern era of tap. His performances weren't just skill, they were spirit. He made tap look cool again, especially to younger audiences who had never seen it before. By the late 1970 period, Gregory's style was so fluid, so natural, it was like watching rhythm take human form. He wasn't following tradition, he was rewriting it. And as he stepped toward the next chapter of his life, Broadway and Hollywood were already waiting for him to bring that magic to the world. When Gregory Hines stepped onto a Broadway stage, man, you could feel the room change. The lights hit, the rhythm dropped, and suddenly everyone was watching him not just for his moves, but for his presence. After years performing with his family, he made his solo Broadway debut in the early 1970 period with Eubie, a musical celebrating the work of jazz legend Eubie Blake. Gregory's performance was electric, full of that same Harlem fire he grew up with. The critics couldn't look away. They said he had feet made of lightning and a smile that could light up the theater. From there, Gregory became one of Broadway's most dynamic stars. He starred in Common Uptown and Sophisticated Ladies, earning Tony nominations and the respect of the theater community. But Gregory wasn't satisfied with just dancing perfectly. He wanted to tell stories, to act, to make people feel something deeper. He once said that for him, dancing wasn't about steps, it was about emotion. "I'm not performing," he said. "I'm confessing." Off stage, Gregory carried himself with that same easy confidence, sharp, funny, humble. People loved being around him because he radiated warmth. He could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with a dozen new friends. You could say charisma was his second rhythm. Still, even with all his Broadway success, Gregory knew he needed to reach wider audiences, so he began taking roles on television and film. His first major film role came in Francis Ford Coppola's The Cotton Club in 1984. Set in Harlem during the Jazz Age, it was a story that felt personal to him about music, race, and artistry in America. His performance was powerful, elegant, and real. Critics noticed that he wasn't just a dancer playing a part, he was a full-fledged actor. That same year, Gregory's reputation exploded. Hollywood started calling, and audiences couldn't get enough of his mix of talent and authenticity. Whether he was tapping on stage or acting on screen, he brought soul to everything he did. By the late 1970 to early 1980 period, Gregory had become one of the most versatile black performers in entertainment. He was paving a new lane, blending tap, drama, and jazz into something nobody had seen before. He wasn't just following a path, he was creating one. By the early 1980 period, Gregory Hines was unstoppable. He had conquered Broadway, but man, he wasn't done yet. He had that rare gift he could move from the stage to the big screen without losing an ounce of charisma. Hollywood was starting to see what theater audiences already knew. This guy was special. In 1985, he appeared in White Nights alongside Mikhail Baryshnikov, and that film took things to another level. It wasn't just a dance movie, it was a clash of worlds, a Cold War story told through movement. Gregory's tap against Baryshnikov's ballet, that was history in motion. You could see the respect between them, two masters speaking different languages but understanding each other perfectly. Critics called their scene one of the most iconic dance sequences ever put on film. Then came Running Scared in 1986, a buddy cop movie with Billy Crystal. Man, the chemistry between those two was off the charts. They played off each other like lifelong friends, smooth, funny, and full of heart. Fans still call it one of the most underrated action comedies of the decade. Gregory showed he could be cool, comedic, and still make you feel something real. He wasn't just a performer anymore, he was a movie star. But Hines didn't stop there. Music was always in his blood. In 1986, he teamed up with Luther Vandross for the hit single There's Nothing Better Than Love. That duet showed a whole different side of him, smooth vocals, honest emotion, and a soulful delivery that surprised even his biggest fans. The song hit #1 on the R&B charts, proving he could not only move people with his feet but touch their hearts with his voice. People started to realize Gregory Hines was a true triple threat. He wasn't limited to one craft. He embodied the art of performance. Yet somehow, even with all these successes, He never got the same mainstream spotlight as other stars of his era. Maybe it was because he didn't fit neatly into a box. Gregory was too unique, too versatile, too real. Still, his influence was spreading fast. Every kid who watched him on screen wanted to learn how to dance, how to move with that kind of freedom. He made tap relevant again, and he made it look effortless. Gregory Hines was redefining what it meant to be an entertainer, and the best was yet to come. By the late 1980 period, Gregory Hines had become a full-blown cultural force. You couldn't box him in. He was acting, singing, dancing, and making it all look easy. He had that rare kind of magnetism that drew people in. When he hit the screen or the stage, man, you felt it. He didn't need fancy effects or big gimmicks. His talent was the show. 1989 brought one of the biggest moments of his career, the film Tap. For fans of dance, that movie was sacred. It wasn't just entertainment, it was a love letter to tap itself. Hines played Max Washington, a former dancer trying to rebuild his life. But for Gregory, it was more than a role, it was his truth. Through his character, he honored the old masters, while pushing the art into the future. The film's most powerful scene featured Gregory sharing the screen with legends like Sammy Davis Jr., Harold Nicholas, and Sandman Sims icons who had inspired him as a kid. Watching them tap together was like watching generations pass the torch in real time. For so many fans, that moment meant everything. One viewer said it best years later, "Tap is a classic movie, ripped to Sammy Davis Jr., Gregory Hines, and Suzanne Douglas." That sentiment echoed everywhere: respect, nostalgia, and gratitude. In that same period, Gregory was working non-stop. A Rage in Harlem, Eve of Destruction, The Preacher's Wife. Each role showed a new side of him: the comic, the romantic, the philosopher. He was proving that a black entertainer could do everything and do it with grace. But he never forgot his roots. He'd often say tap was his first language, the way he prayed, expressed love, or healed pain. Beyond movies, his cultural influence ran deep. Gregory inspired a new wave of dancers, including a young Savion Glover, who would later revolutionize tap in his own right. Gregory saw Savion not as competition, but as continuation. He once said, "When I see Savion dance, I see the future of what we built." That humility, that sense of legacy, that's what made him special. He was also a proud advocate for the arts in black communities. He pushed for tap to be recognized as high art, not novelty. In interviews, he often reminded people that tap came from struggle, from the rhythms of survival. He told stories about how tap grew out of the pain and joy of being black in America, how every sound had meaning. By now, Gregory Hines wasn't just representing dance, he was representing a movement. He was the bridge between old-school showbiz and modern artistry, between Sammy Davis Jr. and Savion Glover, between Harlem Jazz and Hollywood Lights. And even though he was shining brighter than ever, the truth was, the world still didn't fully understand how much of a treasure they had. By the time Gregory Hines reached the height of his fame in the 1990 period, he had already accomplished what most artists could only dream of. Broadway awards, hit films, chart-topping songs, he had done it all. In 1992, he finally took home a Tony Award for Jelly's Last Jam, playing jazz pioneer Jelly Roll Morton. It was a performance so magnetic that audiences gave standing ovations night after night. Man, when Gregory walked out on that stage, it wasn't just acting, it was transformation. He poured his soul into every note, every step, every line. But here's the wild thing. Even after all that, Gregory was still underrated. Yeah, he was respected, deeply respected by everyone in the industry. But when you look at the fame of other multi-talented entertainers like Gene Kelly or Fred Astaire, their names stayed in the spotlight. Gregory's didn't. Maybe it was timing. Maybe it was race. Maybe it was because he didn't chase Hollywood fame the way others did. But the truth is, he deserved to be right up there with the legends. In the mid-1990 period, he starred in The Gregory Hines Show, a sitcom that showcased his humor, warmth, and fatherly charm. It didn't last long, but it reminded people that Gregory could command a screen without even dancing. Around that same time, he appeared in Law and Order, playing attorney Carl Halpert, a role fans still talk about today. One viewer said, "Go watch that episode. Gregory tore apart Jack McCoy and his minions. That's how much presence he had." Even in a single TV episode, he could dominate the whole room. He also lent his voice to animation, voicing Big Bill and Little Bill, the beloved children's show created by Bill Cosby. For an entire generation of kids, that's how they first heard his voice: calm, reassuring, and wise. He gave comfort through art, whether people realized it or not. Yet still, Gregory's name rarely came up when people talked about Hollywood greats. And that's the bittersweet truth. He gave everything decades of creativity, innovation, and class, but the industry didn't celebrate him like they should have. Maybe because Gregory didn't play the fame game. He stayed grounded, private, focused on craft. He didn't need the tabloids or the spotlight. He just needed rhythm. And through all that, he never stopped mentoring others, never stopped encouraging young artists. He'd tell them, "Be yourself. Nobody can dance like you can." That line, that energy became his message to the next generation. So even though Gregory Hines stood tall among giants, he never acted like one. He walked with humility, with grace, with that same Harlem rhythm he started with as a kid. The world may not have fully realized it then, but he wasn't just a performer, he was a movement in motion. For all his charm and brilliance, Gregory Hines wasn't immune to the struggles that come with a life in the spotlight. Behind that magnetic smile and effortless grace, there were moments of exhaustion, disappointment, and quiet pain. Like many black entertainers of his generation, Gregory often carried the weight of being the first or the only. He broke barriers, but that came with pressure, the kind you couldn't always see. Throughout his career, Gregory had to fight to be taken seriously beyond tap. Hollywood often saw him as the dancer, not realizing he was an actor with depth, a musician with soul, a storyteller with vision. He'd sometimes speak about how difficult it was to find roles that reflected the full range of his talent. In interviews, he admitted that being labeled made him feel boxed in, like the world only wanted one version of him. That kind of limitation wears on a man. He poured himself into every project, often balancing theater, film, music, and touring all at once. The physical strain of performing night after night began to take a toll. Tap dancing might look effortless, but it demands strength, endurance, and rhythm that pushes your body to its limits. Even as he grew older, Gregory refused to slow down. He believed movement was life, and stopping meant losing a part of himself. Friends and colleagues noticed how hard he worked, sometimes to his own detriment. He never said no, one dancer recalled. He wanted to be everywhere, for everyone. That generosity, that desire to give, was both his greatest strength and his biggest burden. By the late 1990 period, Gregory's health quietly began to decline. He didn't make a public announcement, didn't seek sympathy. That wasn't his style. He kept performing, even when the signs of fatigue started to show. Some fans remember seeing him on TV, thinner, weaker, but still smiling. One person wrote, "I saw him and noticed how emaciated he was. His death seemed like it happened overnight." In truth, Gregory was facing a private battle with liver cancer. He told only a few close friends and family members. He didn't want the world to focus on his illness. He wanted them to remember the rhythm, the joy, the art. Even as his body weakened, his spirit never did. For Gregory, the stage was both sanctuary and medicine. As long as he could move, he could live. And until his final days, that's exactly what he did. As the new millennium arrived, Gregory Hines was still working, still creating, still moving like rhythm itself. Even while quietly battling cancer, he continued to act, dance, and inspire. That was who he was, a man who gave everything to his craft, no matter what was happening behind the scenes. To the public, he was still the same charismatic performer with the easy smile and smooth presence. But privately, he was growing tired. In 2003, at just 57 years old, Gregory passed away in Los Angeles. His death shocked fans around the world because he had kept his illness secret until the very end. There was no farewell tour, no big announcement, just silence. And then, suddenly, he was gone. The news spread fast, and for so many people, it didn't feel real. One fan said, "I was heartbroken when I saw it on the news. He left us way too soon." Tributes poured in from across the entertainment world. Sammy Davis Jr. had passed just before him, and now it felt like the last of that generation of tap legends had disappeared. Artists, dancers, actors, and musicians all came forward to share stories of Gregory's kindness, humor, and generosity. Billy Crystal said he was one of the most natural and gifted performers I ever worked with. Luther Vandross, who had sung with him on There's Nothing Better Than Love, called him pure energy joy in human form. Gregory was laid to rest in Oakville, Ontario, Canada, alongside his longtime companion, Negrita Jade, a former bodybuilder and fitness trainer who had passed away a few years later. It was a peaceful resting place, quiet, surrounded by trees, far from the bright lights of Hollywood. Some fans still visit his grave, leaving flowers and notes that read, "Thank you for the rhythm." In the months after his passing, tributes appeared everywhere, dance showcases, award shows, documentaries. But what stood out most were the fans. The people who grew up watching him in Running Scared, Tap, or White Nights began sharing memories online. "He made me want to dance," one wrote. "He made me believe rhythm was something sacred." That's the thing about Gregory Hines. Even in death, he continued to teach, to move, to inspire. His rhythm didn't die, it just changed form. It lived on in every performer he inspired and every audience he touched. Gregory Hines may have left this world quietly, but his legacy never stopped making noise. Gregory Hines didn't just dance, he reshaped the language of tap. Before him, the art form had started to fade from mainstream attention. After him, it was alive again. He took something old and made it new, made it cool, made it speak to a new generation. His gift wasn't just in the rhythm of his feet, but in how he connected tap to emotion, how he made it feel human. He used to say that tap was like jazz you could see. That idea changed everything. He saw dance as a conversation, not a performance improvisation, freedom, storytelling. Every tap became a word, every pause a breath. He wasn't just keeping time, he was telling truth. You could feel happiness, pain, anger, and joy in every beat he made. That's what separated Gregory from everyone else. He didn't just do tap, he lived it. His influence stretched far beyond the stage. A young Savion Glover once said, "Gregory Hines showed me how to make tap my own voice." That mentorship became a defining relationship in modern dance. Gregory passed the torch with humility, supporting younger dancers instead of competing with them. He understood that legacy isn't about holding the spotlight, it's about sharing it. When Gregory performed, it wasn't just entertainment for Black audiences, it was representation. He embodied Black excellence with pride and grace. In a time when Hollywood often ignored dancers of color, he stood as proof that artistry had no boundaries. He elevated tap from a novelty act to a respected cultural art form, reminding the world that it was born from the struggles and creativity of African American history. Gregory also pushed for tap to be taught and preserved in schools. He spoke at arts programs and fundraisers, always emphasizing that young kids needed to know where this rhythm came from, that it was their story too. His efforts helped establish tap scholarships, workshops, and mentorship programs that still exist today. By the early 2000 period, many considered Gregory the link between the old masters like Sammy Davis Jr. and the Nicholas brothers, and the new wave led by Savion Glover. He became the bridge that kept tap relevant, powerful, and alive. Even now, his influence is everywhere in movies, TV shows, music videos, and Broadway productions that still echo his style. Gregory didn't just inspire dancers, he inspired storytellers. He showed them that rhythm could move more than your body, it could move your soul. After Gregory Hines passed, something beautiful started to happen. People began rediscovering his work all over again. Clips of his performances spread across the internet, scenes from Tap and White Nights resurfaced, and suddenly, a new generation was asking, who was this man? The answer came from the fans, the ones who had loved him all along. In YouTube comment sections and social media threads, stories poured in. One person wrote, "I had the pleasure to meet Gregory Hines and Savion Glover. He hugged me like family." Another said, "I saw him on TV when I was a kid. That smile, that energy, it never left me." These weren't just random comments. They were personal memories, small pieces of how Gregory had touched people's lives. Many fans talked about his duet with Luther Vandross, There's Nothing Better Than Love. That song still gets played at weddings, anniversaries, and quiet nights when people just want to feel something real. One comment said, "That song is pure soul. Gregory and Luther made magic." Others remembered him from Running Scared, saying, He and Billy Crystal made you wish you could hang out with them. The love was endless, man-real, heartfelt, and still growing. And what's wild is how many people still call him underrated. One fan wrote, "He could act, sing, and dance better than most, but they never gave him enough credit." Another said, "He left too soon, but he gave us everything." That's the recurring theme when people talk about Gregory: gratitude mixed with a little bit of sadness. Some even discovered him through his voice work on Little Bill, realizing only later that the same man behind that comforting character was one of the greatest tap dancers of all time. "That's how I first knew him," a younger fan commented. "And when I learned what else he did, I was blown away." Even today, dance schools still play his performances to teach rhythm and expression. On anniversaries of his passing, tributes pop up online, dancers recreating his moves, musicians sampling his rhythm, fans sharing his quotes. He's not just remembered, he's celebrated. It's poetic, really. The man who brought rhythm to life is still moving people decades later. His name might not be shouted as loudly as some others, but those who know, really know, understand what he gave to the culture. Gregory Hines wasn't just part of entertainment history. He is entertainment history. Gregory Hines' story isn't just about one man, it's about a legacy carved out of rhythm, love, and perseverance. From a Harlem kid with quick feet to a world-renowned entertainer, his journey was pure passion. He didn't follow trends, he set them. He didn't wait for validation. He earned respect through every tap, every smile, every performance that came from the heart. What made Gregory special wasn't only what he did, it was how he made people feel. When he danced, it was like watching joy itself come to life. When he acted, you could see the honesty in his eyes. And when he sang, man, it hit your soul. He had that rare thing you can't fake: authenticity. He never tried to be perfect, he just tried to be real. From Hines and Dad in the 1950 period to Broadway's Jelly's Last Jam, from movie sets to late-night talk shows, Gregory embodied the idea of artistic freedom. He taught the world that rhythm isn't just sound, it's emotion, it's identity, it's truth. For him, tap wasn't about the applause, it was about connection. You could feel his story in the beat of his shoes, the laughter, the struggle, the triumph, the pain. He came from a time when black entertainers had to fight to be seen and respected, and he turned that fight into art. He opened doors for others to walk through. Without Gregory, the resurgence of tap in the 1990 period, the rise of Savion Glover, the renewed respect for black artistry and dance might never have happened. He was the bridge between eras, carrying the wisdom of the old masters while lighting the path for the future. And yet, even with everything he gave, Gregory Hines remains one of the most underrated figures in entertainment history. The fans say it all the time. He should have been mentioned right next to Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire. They're right, but maybe the reason he stands apart is because Gregory never chased that kind of fame. He didn't dance for approval, he danced for life. When people remember him now, it's never just about his awards or his films, it's about how he made them smile, laugh, cry, feel alive. It's about that memory of seeing him glide across a stage like he was weightless, but still deeply grounded in soul. That's the kind of art that doesn't fade. That's immortality. His influence continues to echo in ways big and small. You can see it in every tap dancer who improvises, every performer who blends skill with storytelling, every young artist who learns that excellence isn't about perfection, it's about honesty. Gregory gave permission to be yourself, fully and unapologetically. And that's why, even if his name doesn't come up as often as it should, his impact is everywhere. Every time a dancer improvises a rhythm instead of following a script, that's Gregory. Every time a performer refuses to be boxed in, choosing to be multi-talented and free, that's Gregory. Every time someone says, "Man, I remember that smile," that's Gregory still touching hearts. So maybe the world didn't give him all the awards he deserved. But ask any fan, and they'll tell you Gregory Hines didn't need statues or trophies. He was the award. A living testament to what happens when talent meets integrity, when art meets soul. In the end, Gregory's story is a reminder that being underrated doesn't mean being forgotten. It means being timeless. Because legends like him don't fade, they just keep moving through time, one rhythm at a time. And if you ever want to feel his spirit, just watch Tap. Watch that moment with Sammy Davis Jr., two generations dancing in perfect harmony. That wasn't choreography, that was history speaking. That was love, respect, and artistry colliding in one unforgettable scene. So here's the real question. Do y'all think Gregory Hines ever got the credit he truly deserved? Or was he too far ahead of his time for the world to catch up? Drop your thoughts below, share your favorite Gregory Hines moment, your favorite scene, your favorite song. Because every time we speak his name, every time we remember his art, we keep his rhythm alive. He may have left us at 57, but his spirit, that rhythm, that joy still dances through every stage, every film, every heart he ever touched. Gregory Hines wasn't just a performer, he was rhythm. And rhythm never dies.